In pre-revolutionary Russia, the school calendar was linked to church traditions. In the 19th century, the school year often began in August when the Dormition fast took place. But September as a special date appeared even earlier. In 1492, September the 1st was officially considered the beginning of the year. When Peter I moved the new year to January the 1st, the habit remained, and September the 1st continued to live as an important historical date, which over time turned into the very day of knowledge that we know today. Although such a traditional day of knowledge did not exist in the Soviet Union for a long time, it was only in 1948 that September the 1st was officially made a national holiday. The decree was issued on June 15th. Since then, this day has become the start of the school year not only in Russia but also in most CIS countries. The idea belonged to Fyodor Bruchovetsky, the director of a school in Krasnodar. He was the kind of teacher who loved to turn serious events in school life into a celebration, and in the 1950s he came up with the idea of celebrating September the 1st and the last bell for his school, and gradually this tradition spread throughout the country. By the way, many of the school rules so we are accustomed to also largely come from the same school. Classes on duty monitoring audit during breaks, general work activities for children, student and teacher councils. Bruchovetsky was inspired by the works of the teacher Anton Makarenko and thus brought his ideas to the masses. How do we do our knowledge day? Children with flowers, teachers with ceremonial speeches, first graders being led by the hand, by older children to the assembly and the bell. And once upon a time during the Soviet era, the red banner was always carried out at the assembly to the sound of the pioneer bugle. The students stood at attention, gave a salute, and took an oath to study hard. The first graders were greeted with special ceremony. They were given a primer and a study kit. By the way, primers differed greatly over the years. In pre-revolutionary Russia, for example, the first books contained prayers, and Soviet publications of the 1930s featured illustrations of tractors, workers, and Red Army soldiers. School uniforms also have a long history. We have a separate video about school uniforms in different countries. The first mandatory suit came about at the end of the 19th century and only for female high school students. Long brown dresses with white collars were a symbol of strictness and modesty. In the USSR, the uniform became universal. Girls wore brown dresses with a black apron on weekdays and white ones on holidays. This image became so recognizable that white aprons and bows are still worn today. Only now they're traditionally worn for the last bell. They also wear bows for the first bell, right? Boys often wore tunics and blue caps, and after 1948 they got a standard suit with copper buttons and a badge. In the 1970s and 80s, school uniforms changed again. Jackets and trousers for boys and sundresses for girls appeared. What traditions do school children have in other countries? September 1st is the beginning of the school year is far from universal, but rather post-Soviet tradition. In Europe, it's much more diverse. For example, in Scandinavia, summer holidays are shorter, and school children in Finland, Denmark, and Sweden return to school by the 15th to the 20th of August. In Norway, some schools open as early as the first days of August. Northerners believe that they have enough time to rest during the long daylight in the summer days, and then it's time to study. But in the UK, the school year starts in different ways. Most schools in England and Wales open their doors in the first week of September, while Scotland and Northern Ireland may not wait until autumn and start school at the end of summer, as early as August. It's also interesting in Austria, where classes start at the beginning of September, but not on the 1st, but a few days later. Dates vary by state. In Germany and Switzerland, the range is even wider, with classes starting in mid-August in some places and around the last 10 days of September in others. In Italy, the start date of the school year is approved regionally. The further north you go, the earlier kids sit down at their desks, and universities in Italy can only open in October or even November. One theory suggests that this dates back to the Middle Ages, when education adjusted to the agricultural calendar. While the farmers were harvesting, students and professors were unable to study fully, and the academic year shifted closer to autumn. Spain, of course, also does not rush. Their schools open around mid-September, where the younger grades usually start in a little earlier so parents can calmly return to work after the summer holidays. And so it turns out that September the 1st is symbolically our Knowledge Day, coinciding with the beginning of the calendar autumn, but for Europeans, for whom summer officially lasts until the 21st of September, the logic is different. Why send children to class when it's hot and the holidays are still in full swing? In the US and Canada, the school year also does not start at the same time, depending on the state or province. In the US, children most often return to school at the end of August or early September. There is even a tradition celebrated after Labor Day on the first day of September. But for example, in southern states like Georgia or Arizona, the school year starts as early as the beginning of August. The heat there will never go away, so there is no point in keeping children at home until September. In some northern states, on the contrary, the start is delayed until closer to mid-September so that families can finish the season on lakes or different farms. Canada is similar, only the dates are shifted even further towards September. In most provinces, students return to class in the first week of the month, usually immediately after Labor Day. There are exceptions, but they are minor. Canadians love order, so they try to ensure that the school year starts at roughly the same time everywhere. American colleges and universities, on the other hand, begin classes in mid to late September, sometimes even early October. This is not only due to the academic calendar, but also with the campus life culture. Adaptation weeks, student festivals, and sports games occupy the first weeks of autumn for students. In Malaysia and Singapore, the school year begins in January, right after the New Year. On the first day, they have formal ceremonies with the raising of the flag and singing of the anthem and obligatory director speeches. One more important detail: school uniform is so important here that each school has its own unique tie or badge color. You can tell right away what school a student is from. In Malaysia, school uniforms are a whole part of the culture. It was introduced under the British at the end of 19th century and was standardized in its modern form in 1970. Since then, every student in a public school is required to wear a uniform, while private schools naturally can afford more variation. Now, there are very strict rules about school children's hairstyles. Dyeing hair is strictly prohibited, and for guys, the length must be visibly a few centimeters above the collar. Even sideburns are taboo. The control is so tight that in some schools, barbers are on duty right at the gates to trim the hair of anyone who decides to cheat. Okay, just kidding. Hehehe, funny. There is also a special system with ties. It's not only an accessory, but also a kind of distinction mark. Ties are worn by prefects, librarians, and generally anyone with a school position. In some schools, everyone is required to wear a tie, but even then, it is worn mainly for formal events. In South Korea, school starts on the 2nd of March. There, March is considered the beginning of spring and new life. In Japan, the school year begins in April, coinciding with the cherry blossom season. This is symbolic, as the cherry blossoms represent the beginning of a new cycle: beauty, purity, harmony. First graders come to the assembly wearing identical new uniforms and bright backpacks Renda Zero. Previously, they were made in only two colors. Red ones were for girls, black ones for boys. But now, of course, you can choose a Renda Zero of any color. In India, school also starts in April, and on the first day, many schools conduct the Vidya Rambham ritual. The name of the ceremony derives from the Sanskrit terms, Vidya meaning knowledge and Rambham meaning beginning. Children are taught to write the first letters of the alphabet on grains of rice. In the southern states like Kerala, it's a whole religious event carried out by the light of temple lamps. In Thailand, the school year starts in mid-May, the season of heat and the first rains. The Vaikra ceremony is an important tradition. Students present flower arrangements to their teachers as a sign of respect. In the Philippines, the start of school in June is often accompanied by what is known as Brigada Escuela. I don't know how it's pronounced correctly, but I assume it's something like that. All parents, even neighbors, help clean and paint the school before the first day. I wonder if they also chip in for the curtains or not, as we do. Friends, that's all from me. If you liked the episode, give it a like to help out the channel, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, and see you in the next episodes.